Okay, let's run.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it.
It's a quest. It's a quest for fun.
Well, The Rock says, why don't we just cut right to the chase?
Okay, now he wants to get together. Well, he wants to talk.
I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
It's showtime, folks!
What are you?
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to And I Quote, the weekly show where we introduce you to content creators of all shapes and sizes that join us from many and all corners of the nerd universe. We find out more about them and take your questions. I am your host, Ryan of Nerd Culture, and our guest this week is comic book veteran extraordinaire. He's been there and done that with pretty much every name under the sun: DC, Marvel, independent titles, not so independent titles, and even Moonshine Bigfoot, but we'll talk more about that later. Please welcome from Denver, Colorado, the mile-high city of the US of A. Please welcome Zach Howard to the stage. Zach, how are you, big man?
Hello. How's it going, man?
It's going well. It's going well. I'm glad that you're here, and we're happy that you're with us. Now, if you have any questions for Zach Howard as we go throughout the course of this episode of And I Quote, make sure you leave it in the chat, leave it in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Also, do not forget to like and share this episode with all of your closest friends, because they are going to like the way they look after watching or listening to this episode of And I Quote. We guarantee it. Zach Howard, first up for you, how were you specifically introduced to the world of comics?
You mean like my origin story, like when I was a kid type stuff? Or...
Exactly. Going all the way back to the beginning.
Roger that. So I grew up on military bases kind of around the world, so it was hard for me to get exposed to comic books, actual literal comic books. So when I lived in a place called Karlsruhe, Germany, as the base next to this cool castle on the Rhine River, all I could get in Germany was 2000 AD. And what was the other? Oh, obviously Conan the Barbarian, but the magazine, the kind of like EU edition sizes. So that was just comic books to me growing up. So all I did was try and draw Conan chopping people's arms off. And then my other super young family friendly title was Judge Dredd. So I kind of grew up with those. Yeah, I had kind of limited exposure, and I just would try and recreate the drawings myself, while I was just sitting there in a TLQ on a military base in Germany during the Cold War. So yeah, it was just kind of like a independent venture of my own getting into comic books.
Goodness gracious. Well, bonus question when it comes to the character of Judge Dredd. Which was your favorite iteration, the Stallone or the Carl Urban version?
I didn't break the law. I am the law. No, I'd have to say the Carl Urban one. And the cool thing is my cover, the relaunch for Judge Dredd in America, the cover I did for that, if you watch the DVD extras, like the history of Judge Dredd, they use that image for the introduction to Judge Dredd. So that was kind of a cool little feather in my cap from my childhood. I get the history of Judge Dredd has my crap right on the front.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to go back and watch that, because I do have the Dredd with Carl Urban on Blu-ray, so I'm going to have to look that up.
It's in there. Look at there's like a DVD extra. You'll see it. Pretty cool. I think Chris Ryle, my old editor, is, actually the editor of Moonshine Bigfoot. The guy I did Shaun of the Dead with back in the day. He's talking on the video about it. So pretty cool.
My goodness gracious, that is really good stuff. Any other, or do you have any, I should say, favorite comic book writers or artists, past or present?
Oh, geez. Well, artists is easy. Writers, I would say the first one, obviously old school Frank Miller did it for me. 90s Mignola. Mobius was hit and miss for me, but always beautiful. Sorry if you can hear my dogs. They're fighting the UPS man, which is a pretty intense fight. But they're good at it. Writers right now, I'd say Mike Raich, who I did, he's the most underrated badass that I know. He did Wild Blue Yonder with me, which is my most popular indie title that I created, I guess, my original property. And then Joe Hill, obviously Stephen King's son of Lock and Key fame. Black Phone, the movie that just came out. He's just a phenomenal writer. I did The Cape with him in 2010, and that was, I think, the only time I got a real serious Eisner nod. That was, I think it was 2010 best single issue or whatever like that, which was pretty cool. Came with a lot of accolades, but working with those two writers, I'd say, are technically my favorite. Though growing up, of course, it was Chris Claremont. Probably once I got that X-Men bug in me, is Mark Silvestri and Chris Claremont, and that lit me up for years. And so I'd say for my childhood, that would be number one. Also liked Roger Stern because I was a big Hulk fan when I was young. And I got to, when I actually drew a Hulk book in 2009-ish, he was actually the writer on it. So that was pretty cool, feather in my cap, working with somebody that was big as a kid, or was big and lit up my childhood, obviously when I was young. Artists, I'd say the first name artist I knew was Frank Frazetta because I loved reading the Conan books. Mm-hmm. So that's the first guy I knew by name and could just recognize their artwork. But after that, John Buscema, of course, because he did Conan and damn near everything good during my childhood. Favorite artist, oddly enough, I was a Mignola fan even back when he was doing the Hulk covers in like 1986 when he kind of had this Plug European style, kind of bubbly Plug. I loved him even back then. And then once I got to Frank Miller, when Ronin and Sin City and Dark Knight came out, I don't think there was a person that affected me more artistically. I'd say the very first volume of Sin City, that was the most seminal piece of artwork that I've ever touched or read, at least in my life. So that would be it. Long, rambling answer, but there you go, sir.
No, we appreciate the answer and the names that you brought up. If someone's interested to learn more about these individuals, now they have some names that they can go for or go to and learn more about it. Just out of curiosity, though, when you mentioned the title known as The Cape, does that have any relation to the short-lived TV series that was on NBC?
Fortunately, no. It's not.
Okay.
That's just an unfortunate. That came out like 6 months after we made The Cape, and it was all people. Unfortunately, they always supersede TV trash with comic book trash. So that was just unfortunate. That you can't copyright something called The Cape. Like it was called Poison. You can't copyright that. Just certain words you can't, or phrases that you just can't copyright. So unfortunately, that disaster. Well, I used to get asked a lot. This is the first time in a while because that came out in like 2010 or something.
Yeah, like it was like 13 years ago now.
Yeah, pretty rough stuff. But I get it. It was on mainstream TV and has the same name, so it's very. I would say if you've never read Joe Hill, get ready. There's a reason we got nominated for Book of the Year on that one. That was one of them that we were about halfway through with the first issue. It was originally a one shot, and I was halfway done with it, and they made it a mini series because it was already every once in a while you work on something, you can tell you have lightning in a bottle. And that was one of the projects within pages where like, holy crap, this is going to be something. And it did. Hell, I still get royalty checks. It's never not been in hardcover since 2009 or 2010 when it got collected. And I don't have a property that never got translated into any other medium than a hardcover book. So obviously that one's been successful. It's been optioned many times by movies, and it looks like we got a real one coming up, but I can't talk about it yet, about The Cape. So keep your Ojo's peeled. Keep them peeled. Keep them open.
I'll be sure to keep that in mind. And once again, we are talking with comic book veteran Zach Howard here on this episode of And I Quote. Don't forget to like and share this episode with all of your closest friends. If you have any questions for Zach, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. Be more than happy to hear from you, whether you're watching this live or on the replay. Thank you for being with us. With that being said, what are some of your other favorite comic book movies or TV series, past or present?
Oh, gosh. Movies, obviously. Growing up in Germany, we didn't have TV or really even access to movies. They'd like come a year later in the military theater, and there'd only be one movie. So you didn't get to really take part in that level of pop culture, new releases and things like that. Like Robotech launched while I was
Mm-hmm.
in traveling, all the fun things. The only thing I got to see was I was there for like the first 2 months. I was in the U.S. first 2 months of Transformers, so I got to catch that train early and showed up in Germany with the only one with actual Transformers toys. So I was quite popular there for about 6 months, having Optimus Prime. But I'd say Conan the Barbarian, the movie. My parents probably shouldn't have let me watch that when I was 8, but I did. And you got to remember, I'm Gen X, man. They a latchkey kid in the military. We saw our parents like late supper time. That's the only time we saw it. So what would happen in Germany is you get a lot of blank VHSs, and you would start trading movies, and you'd have all these VHSs that would have 3 movies on them. And you and your friends would just trade them. And the movies that were in that like VHS kind of community, those are the movies you memorized. Like I have Conan the Barbarian memorized, Alien memorized, goofy stuff like Revenge of the Nerds. That one didn't age well, but a lot of those movies that came out like 84 to 86 or 83 to 86, that's all we had on videos. So those are probably very influential to me. John Milius making Conan the Barbarian, ended up befriending some of the artists that made the movie, which was really exciting. Influenced me a lot as a storyteller in all aspects of that story, and how they translated that to a movie, because it doesn't translate well. You can look at a lot of comic book stuff that's been tried to turn into a movie, and you can just tell they didn't figure out how to change it into a specific medium. They're trying to, it's a delicate formula. And that's why you'll see like a couple, like 1 or 2 really good superhero movies, and then everybody else is just trying to rip them off, because the formula is so hard translating that medium from comic books to movies and or TV. But Conan definitely did it. And then movies like Road to Perdition definitely did it, though much easier. Translating a crime noir than say like Hellboy. That's a hard world to create and make work in movies. I think I'm rambling a bit, but I'd say Conan the Barbarian, Ghostbusters, Alien, the first 2, Alien and Aliens, way different movies, both brilliant in their own right. But movies of that ilk, probably the best movie I think pound for pound out there, it was Indiana Jones. When the first one, when I start building a story with a writer, I try to use that pacing. Like if you see Wild Blue Yonder, we use the Indiana Jones pacing for that. Even though it has nothing to do with Indiana Jones, that movie's so flawless. Raiders of the Lost Ark. You can learn a lot. Structure, pacing, how long you make a scene. If you have a negative scene, how you balance it with a more positive character scene afterwards. I think that movie's pretty flawless. And of course, I grew up, young, so I saw all 3 original Star Wars in their theaters, in the theater, albeit I was quite young, the first one. The next 2 I have distinct memories of seeing, though. So I'd say all those classics that came out about that time seem to permeate my skull, and they reside in my brain still, because that's what I mean, even for Moonshine Bigfoot, we're calling back to Americana between 75 to probably 83 or something like that. That kind of magical, innocent era of art production post-Vietnam. So post-Deer Hunter, so it's not quite as sad.
Right. Good picks, man. It's interesting. It's interesting you bring up Indiana Jones, because I was just rewatching, and I'm in the process of, I haven't finished it yet, but I'm still in the process of rewatching The Last Crusade.
Yeah.
Because I did things in reverse. I grew up watching Last Crusade, and then I went back and watched the other ones, including Raiders of the Lost Ark, which great. I mean, both that and Last Crusade are just incredible.
Yeah. I'm a big Temple of Doom fan. I mean, I absolutely love that movie. I know it gets a little hate, and I've never understood why. Ooh, boo.
Sorry.
Ooh.
Not
it's okay. It's okay. You might like Aquaman, and I'll have to take a dump on him later. So it's all good, and I get it, because the tone is different. But as an individual movie, I think it works brilliantly, and I really enjoyed it. Though, to your point, it ain't the other two.
No, it's
and
not.
I never even saw the fourth one. I saw the trailer for it, and the guy got out of survived a nuclear blast in a fridge. I was
that
like,
would be
out.
Indiana Jones did, yeah.
Yeah, out. I'm out.
Okay,
I'm out.
fair enough.
You got to somewhat abide by physical reality. Yeah, you got to have some foundational understanding that these people live in the world that we live in, and even if you have fantastical things, great, i.e. the Ark or whatever. A guy can rip out your heart with magic stones, whatever. However, just basic physical laws really irk me. So that one looked like a disaster, so I never saw it. I love Indiana Jones too much. I couldn't do it.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, follow-up question. Are you going to see the retirement film with Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny?
I probably will have to. I think they're doing it. I think they learned their lesson last film. Don't listen to George Lucas. And and then after that, you got a chance at making a movie that's watchable. So,
and you got a great director behind this one with James Mangold.
So they got the elements. I think they learned from the last one. So that's fair. Yeah, I'm in the process of rewatching Last Crusade on Blu-ray right now because I went to a place where I am in where my studio is, and they had used Blu-rays and DVDs, and they had the set of all 4 movies on Blu-ray that came out sometime. I mean, there have been not two different versions, but 2 different packagings of the Indiana Jones movies on Blu-ray. There's one that looks like a book, like a flaps of a book that has all 4 films, including a bonus disc. This one is in a regular Blu-ray case with all 4 movies, including the bonus feature. So it's not like you get less with a different set. Yeah, just less superfluous packaging.
Yeah, it's different format. But either way, I got it, and I brought it home, and I've been rewatching Last Crusade, and I'm thinking to myself, so much fun in this movie.
It's pretty flawless as well.
It is. So good. And the Holy Grail is like, and you said it yourself, when it comes to, and I'm speaking about movies in general, sometimes you have to suspend disbelief. It's very difficult to do that with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, whereas in Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade, it feels real. Like these things could actually exist. And the Ark of the Covenant is real, and the Holy Grail to an extent is real, but they took creative liberties with it, of course. But at the same time, the Holy Grail to me feels real. Like you can get it, you can touch it.
I agree with you. And they don't bring in the magic until the story's at its culmination, and that's part of it. Where again, you got to set your own rules for your story. But once you ground that universe, sorry if I crapped out.
No. It's okay. Yeah, you did cut out, but I think we got you back.
Good. I'm going to turn off my ad blockers just in case.
There you go. I got you.
But for those types of stories, you're grounding them in a physical reality that we exist in. Now, if you're going to fantastical elements, that's part of action, adventure, fantasy. But you can't rely on that as a plot device in a story. Right. Otherwise, it can't be your foundational element, magic, because we live in the real world and objective reality. So to bring in magic, it almost has to not affect the story. It's revealed at the end that, okay, things aren't quite as you believe, i.e. when you open the Ark, you pull upon old, biblical and Judeo-Christian texts and go punish them all. And it's done in this brilliant, fast, horrible, it's a quick scene, and that's testament to the one good thing George Lucas did for that film is he came back and recut that scene. Spielberg had it twice as long, and he's like, this isn't working. It's because we don't care about the ghost flying around. We care about if Indiana Jones is going to survive that, him and his girl. So Lucas is really good at quick cuts and just machine gunning you and getting out. And that's what he brought to that scene. And what it did is it stopped, especially nowadays with special effects. They hang on this, hey, look at these cool special effects for 5 minutes. And that's not the story. So when you're watching Doctor Strange, eventually it just feels like the green screen adventure because everything is magic. And you forget the story I want to watch is about the damn character and his or her journey, and to become a different, usually better person, and or save X. And it seems like a lot of movies now are so lost in special effects that we forgot to make a darn movie. And that's why I love things like Indiana Jones, where like, yeah, we got some cool special effects, but the character's fantastic. You don't care if the character's trying to find his pair of shoes to put on and tie the shoelaces. You would still watch it because it's Indiana effing Jones, and you want to know what he's doing, And I think people forget that the character isn't the little magic hands or the green screen with the crazy spaceship exploding behind him for 5 minutes. Very important elements, but we hang on that rather than the story nowadays for most mainstream stuff, especially comic book related. They're more worried about the Easter eggs and the visuals than they are about just making a dynamic character story. If you look at the first Iron Man story, that was a fantastic kind of vignette of a man's life during his midlife crisis. That's what the story is about. Iron Man was cool when he finally got to see a working Iron Man. Still didn't make the movie. It was the damn character. You wanted to see that character win, not because he was Iron Man, but because he became invested in the actual human being behind him or within him. And I think that's where we're really missing out on the more contemporary superhero stuff, or at least things translated from comic books specifically. And I hope we do figure that out as an industry. Because right now it just seems like a cash grab plus, hey, look at the shiny bauble for 2 hours. Great. No one's going to be talking about Ant-Man 3 in 20 years, but they're still going to be talking about Indiana Jones, and I think legacy projects, no one's trying to make legacy projects anymore. They're trying to cash in. They're chasing the dragon of money and fame. But I get it. If you got $200 million and Disney expects you to make $2 billion off of that, there's some sleepless nights in trying to make fans happy. And that can be a dangerous thing, trying to go after fans' happiness, because that's constantly evolving.
Well, welcome to Zach Howard's special TED Talk here on this special episode of And I Quote, where we are talking with comic book veteran known as Zach Howard. And if you have any questions or questions for Zach, I should say, gee whiz, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. If you're watching this live or on the replay, thank you so much for being here. And don't forget to like and share this episode with all of your closest friends. And once again, Zach, thank you for your TED Talk. My response to that, because I do want to segue into something here real quick. But before I get to that, when it comes to making a movie, and this is something I feel, granted, I haven't seen too many of the newer films because I've been watching some of the older stuff. I've been rewatching some classics, such as The Last Crusade.
Yes.
I realize that when a filmmaker or a team of people, because it takes a team of people to put together a movie, it's a very big production. I feel like something gets lost when you have too much money to play around with. If you have a limited budget and you have to think on your feet and put something together, whether it's through storyboarding or you have to put it on a sheet of paper. And by the way, there's no right or wrong way to put together your movie or your visuals. It's just a matter of how you get it done.
Yeah.
Going back to the 80s, because you brought this up earlier with the 1980s. In 1984, there was a film called The Terminator, directed by James Cameron. And he had a very limited, almost shoestring budget. But he made that film work perfectly.
Yeah.
For what it was doing in terms of telling its story and focusing on the protagonist as well as the antagonist with, the T-101 and then Sarah Connor being on the run from her life because she's being thrown all this stuff at her and she's what is all this stuff? Where is this coming from? But at the same time, she becomes her own character as the story progresses. And that's what I feel in some days. Nowadays, when you have $200 million to make a film, go back to making films on $10 million.
Just
$5 million.
$150 million of shiny baubles.
Yeah, to a certain degree, you're right. But back in the 80s and other eras of filmmaking, when you had limited budgets and you had either a short named cast or a big name cast, you made it work. And they did. You
boiled the fat off the bones and you found your story. And then you made that story. Sarah Connor self-actualizes during this. She was a lost character. By the end of the movie, she's the hero. and that's her own hero's journey, though not strictly with how Campbell did it, but in effect, that's her hero's journey. And that's why we're there. We're trying to live vicariously through them. We shouldn't, through your heroes, you shouldn't just be a voyeur. And that's what I feel like in a lot of modern stuff. It's voyeurism. Okay, this dumb character, The Rock, now is pissed off and he has a lightning bolt on his chest and he's going to yell at this famous actor for 20 minutes. And then we're going to watch super people gritting their teeth while they're making their hand gestures and flying around. And that's your movie. Whereas to your point, you need a story about a character that we can identify with. And that's what we lost. We want to go on a journey with this person. And if they aren't going on a journey, then who cares? Or if it's a journey that's just old hat, like I watched that Ant-Man movie. Sorry, I've only seen so many Marvel movies, and I always use that one as a bad example. All they were trying to do is say, okay, people like Iron Man because of this, people like this because of that. We'll just put that in the same movie. Or you get Iron Man 2. Wow, that was a great movie. Iron Man, people loved it. So what did they like about it? There was Iron Man, you like Iron Man, now there's 100 Iron Men in it. And it's like, wow, you're going the wrong way. You got enough Iron Man in it. Let's make another character story that just happens to have Iron Man in it. And I think, again, Indiana Jones, this guy's just living his life, you know? And exactly. He has a passion that he's following, and that's it. That's the crux of it, and it takes him on adventure rather than, you know, this heavy-handed tripe that we see in most modern cinema. It really feels to me like, one, they're either cashing in for money, or you get the other end, what you see in the Academy Awards, movies nobody ever wants to watch that are serious and sad and so boring, 8-hour just garbage. And, you know, they're just spoon feeding you heavy-handed schlock, emotional schlock. And then they get the Academy Award, and then no one ever sees the movie ever, has no clue what it is or cares. So, and it just seems like somewhere between that pendulum of extreme crap on both ends, there has to be some good art left in there. And occasionally you get a gem that kind of spits out. And to your point, it's always a passion-driven project. I got $0. I got a handful of nickels, and I got to make a movie. So I got to call in favors. I got to make sure there's no wasted scene, no fat on the bones. The character, it laser focuses you. And whereas if you have this big open, just this endless bag of money and egos, well, then it becomes about that. It becomes money management mixed with herding cats, which are these actors and talent and things like that. So, you know, you got a room full of rich narcissists trying to make something, which never works. It never works. It never, ever, ever works. But it just seems to be, it just happens. That's how entertainment happens. When there's money, I made one property that made some good money, and that was Wild Blue Yonder. And I ended up having to sell it. I just sold the IP because I couldn't deal with success. Brings a lot of vampires. And they're everywhere in entertainment. And that happens to good projects as well, as the vampires start smelling money. And then suddenly, you know, you have 7 producers that are making you put YouTube stars in your effing movie. And you're like, this isn't why I got into this, man. You know? So,
Right. How Zach Howard feels about the Hollywood Industry 101. Please take your seats. No, I'm just kidding. But I do want to take a moment here. Philip Jean-Pierre chimes in. He has a question saying, speaking of character for you, Zach, which comic book character did you feel truly invested in?
The most invested I've ever felt in a character was Tug from Wild Blue Yonder. And we got hate mail, which actually it was a positive because we had to kill that character. But I remember there's a 3-page sequence where I had to kill him. And I'm getting goosebumps right now. I was listening to, like, going through my old Pixies catalog, just listening to all my Pixies again, because they had a new album out. And it just created this beautiful morose setting kind of in my soul for him that I think kind of set up for me killing him. And he had to martyr himself to redeem himself, and how he did it. Mike Raich just wrote the most beautiful scene, and I I just remember it just affected me for years that almost like I killed a real person. And he hit that. So I'd have to say Tug from Wild Blue Yonder. And those that read it will know it broke everybody's heart. But it's just part of the story. When you're telling stories, you have to do certain things for the character. And the character could not redeem himself without sacrificing his own life for everyone. And how Mike wrote it, he was the everyman, which is odd because he didn't have the flashy abilities of Scram in the story or the although he had a coming of age story. He wasn't the star like Kola, the girl and her dog in it, and because it was very much a Miyazaki story. It's coming of age of a young woman, but this character is how all readers got into the story. They basically became Tug vicariously to be introduced to this world. So when we had to kill him, it was rough, man. It was really rough. It was really rough for me. Oddly enough, usually I like when they have me killing characters. I'm like, oh, cool. We'll just have them explode in a blood mist, and I never have to draw them again. However, this one to this day sticks with me, man. So sorry. Thanks, Philip, and sorry for the rambling thing, and sorry, people. It isn't like the Hulk. I did enjoy drawing the Hulk. Spider-Man oddly did it for me, even though I was kind of doing all ages stories. That was one of the only things I'm like singing the Spider-Man song while I'm drawing. You kind of feel like a kid, I couldn't do it full time, but doing a few books here and there was a lot of fun. So those are my two, one indie and one mainstream.
There you go. And once again, we are talking with comic book veteran Zach Howard on this episode of And I Quote. Don't forget to like and share this episode with all of your closest friends. If you have any questions for Zach Howard, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat, whether you're watching this live or on the replay. Thank you so much for being with us. Zach, when did you specifically decide to become a comic book writer or artist?
I got out of the Marines and I went back to college and I wanted to take drawing. I think when I was a kid, you think, I want to do this. But there's no like avenue into it, especially before the internet. It was just this mysterious thing that always came out. You didn't know how to get into comic books. I had no one to talk to. So that dream just kind of withered away. I did so well my first year of college. The Marines recruited me, thought I'd be good for catching bullets. So after I failed out of college, I went into the Marines. When I got out of the Marines, I went back to college, and college was super easy. But when I started college, they didn't have any drawing classes. I wanted to get into drawing, but they had like sculpture and ceramics. So I took that. Next thing I know, a few years later, I'm a professional ceramicist and was paying for college literally by making vases and selling my sculptures and competing on fine art circuits. Regardless, anyway, so I was doing well in college with pottery and sculpture. My thesis year of college, I had to take one more class, and it ended up being illustration. And the professor had done he had one thing that he did, a real thing in comics, and that was Aliens versus Predator. But that was the first comic pro. I was like, whoa, just teach me everything. Excuse me. He dragged me along to MegaCon and made me show off my schoolwork, and I got a good response. So my girlfriend at the time, now wife, I just said, hey, we're both graduating. I know I made really good money for college. I bought my own truck. I paid her rent, a lot of crap, rare stuff for a college kid with all my sculpture. I was very fortunate. So it was a big chance. I was like, if I go this route, it's going to be years before I get hired. Because I wasn't a professional illustrator. Hell, I was a sculptor. So at 24, I had to get serious about drawing and really learn how to draw. And my wife I was very fortunate. She let me be almost unemployed for 2 years. And as at the end, all I could get was gaming manual stuff for Steve Jackson Games. But it taught me how to be a pro, because they'd need a pirate with a knife this drawing, and a train the next drawing, and then a universe exploding the next drawing. So it taught you how to be professional, like a hired assassin. Learn to draw anything and also make the client happy. So while I was kind of getting paid to do that, not paid a lot, but paid somewhat to be a professional artist, that company got the rights to Hellboy. And this is when Hellboy was first starting to get popular, right before the first movie. They had the role-playing game, and Mignola chose me and a guy named Peter Bergting to draw the resource manual. So I got to draw the comic book in it and a whole bunch of, just static resource manual shots for the game, the GURPS game of Hellboy. That immediately launched me into a few side projects. And then within, by the time I was like 28, I was drawing Batman, or 28, 29. So I right away got Detective Comics. And that was always like the pinnacle. People are like, if you get that, you're the cream of the crop and your career's set. And so I was all excited. But after doing a few books, I found myself very, very unhappy in that setting. It was, and not to disparage anyone, it was just it was a factory setting for me. Apologies, everyone. I was going to say farking. Didn't know if that offends people's ears, to fark. But anyhow, I just was miserable. And I remember my inker telling me inker didn't look good on me. I tried so hard and I was so miserable. It's just everybody was just kind of hammering paychecks and did not care about the book at all. So, rough lesson, we're doing commercial art. So disillusioned, I decided to finally quit after, 8 months or something, doing several books for them. And I was told my career was over. And then I thought I was going to do one more show, and I thought I'd go get a master's in film or something. And I was at a Chicago event, a Wizard World, and very young, green, 2 weeks into the job, Chris Ryle, who had taken over IDW, who at the time was a super dinky art book company, asked if I wanted to do a zombie book with him. I said, sure. On a whim, I was like, I've never done zombies, and it's an indie book, and I'll try it, and then leave comics. And that ended up being Shaun of the Dead, which was about you probably know, that was quite a famous book and movie, and the book was in print for 14 years, and it kind of relaunched my comic book career as a dual creator. Then I could do both. I jumped around between independent stuff and superhero stuff to pay the bills, then Aliens, and then I just got obsessed with making my own stuff, and that went into Wild Blue Yonder, doing the Cape for Joe Hill, the sequel to the Cape, and all the odds and ends that I do because I get bored so easy. I usually just migrate from job to job. And then Hellboy happened, and then COVID, so I kind of was on hold during that. And now we're doing Moonshine Bigfoot. So I've had a weird, convoluted career, and it's mostly just the boredom. I can't draw 10 issues of Wolverine doing things. I have to do a few issues and move on, or one shot and move on. And that's one thing I think that's always degraded at least the fame part of my career. I don't have problems getting work or being offered things, but I'm also not a fan name, even though I've been doing this 23 years and I've had some very fortunate successes. So that's one detriment I've kind of brought onto myself, is not sticking with one title for very long. I get bored.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what would you say are some of the rewards about being a comic book writer or artist?
Oh, free trips, because we don't get paid a lot. So I was at Africa Con last year, and then for a full week, they sent us on this safari, the National Kruger Park. They're one of the biggest preserves on planet Earth, where I got to stay there and my wife with a honeymoon bungalow. So we have like a $10,000 vacation we just get for coming out to Africa and doing their show. So things like that, getting to go to France and Chile and Nice and traveling the world, I'd say is the absolute biggest perk of this job, is because I like seeing the world. I grew up traveling around the world, and now whenever I go someplace cool, I just buy a ticket for my wife too, and we get a mini vacation. Though it's never a clean vacation, we still have to work. I would have never made it to the Kruger in South Africa and been treated the way I was. And people treat you very nicely sometimes when you're talent that's flying in for that. And that's my favorite part of it, is meeting people from different places and seeing their culture. That's what I'd say is number one.
There you go. And Zach Howard is our guest on this week's episode of And I Quote. Don't forget to like and share this episode with all of your closest friends. If you have any questions for Zach Howard, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. Whether you're watching this live or on the replay, thank you so much for being with us. On the opposite side of the fence, though, Zach, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges about being a comic book writer or artist?
the isolation, like I've been working, I have a nice office, but it's in my basement, and I work here 10 to 14 hours a day, which is, it's great working on your passion, but it does get very, very lonely. And even though I'm a level 99 isolationist, there's a certain aspect, you miss that camaraderie and that's why conventions sometimes are so wonderful, because you get to see, people actually exist and read my books, and I'm signing for it, and they seem happy that they had my book. And even better on top of that, you get to rub shoulders with your buddies that you only see once every few years. And that's the most beautiful part. I'd say the pendulum from the isolation. I just work by myself, and the whole world is kind of abstract at that point, and it eventually breaks it down. It becomes a prison cell. Drawing your book and being paid to draw your own book eventually becomes a prison cell, and you got to mitigate that healthily. And a lot of people do it in different ways. I prefer working out and jogging with my dogs and stuff. But if you don't have that constant release, whatever it ends up being, binging movies or whatever it is, you gotta soak in the serrations of yourself in a healthy manner. I mean, don't start doing crack. At least I'd strongly advise not to. But a lot of people do mitigate. I know a lot of people that mitigate with alcohol and drugs, and I'm not opposed to alcohol and drugs, but they shouldn't be a crutch for your passion to get through it. And so if that's what's happening, you gotta admit it. You have to figure it out. I've seen a lot of people crash and burn in one way or another. They flip out online just having a bad day or a bad moment, and it ruins their careers. They get lost in the end of a bottle and drink themselves, to death, and just become these old curmudgeons that you see at a show, and they're just these withered, bitter men. And so you got to constantly fight that entropy of sating yourself with micro kind of dopamine things, and rather build a structured system in your life that mitigates the isolation and it's not uncommon for a comic book artist to work 70, 80 hours in a week. And it sucks because we make as much as a school teacher, and which also sucks, so that we pay them so low. But you gotta to be able to maintain a healthy approach to your passion, i.e. creativeness, whether it's writing, drawing, producing, whatever you do for comic books, music, whatever art form, you have to find a counterbalance. Your life has to balance. Otherwise, it just gains momentum. And next thing you know, you're screaming hateful things online while half drunk, and you wonder why you can't get your Deadpool job anymore. You're drawing, Captain Frogman or something, like some terrible side project, because nobody wants a bitter curmudgeon, volatile bitter curmudgeon drawing their favorite title. They want somebody like Ryan Otley, who's in a good mood and is exciting as his artwork is exciting. You want those positive people in expressing your books, I'd say, in the most part. So it can be very easy to fall into the darkness of isolation and working in a niche field where you don't get a lot of rewards as far as like money and true accolades, because it's such a niche form. So being healthy is the number one challenge, I would say, in working with this. Mm-hmm. And all the groupies, I can't take it, dude. Just always beating them off with a stick. They wait outside my office in a line. So you'd think in the suburbs it wouldn't happen, but it does, because comic books are that awesome.
Wow. Fun facts we're learning here on this episode of And I Quote. But with that, gee whiz. Well, where can we go from here? We can only go up from here, right? No, we're actually...
Let's go up, sir. Hold hands. Let's go up.
We're going to go up, maybe not so much down, but I do want to share something with you. This is a cover for something known as Hellboy and the BPRD, The Return of Effie Kolb. So I'm just curious. And for those of you who are listening, we're looking at the cover of Hellboy from, I believe it's Dark Horse Comics. So how did this all come about, and what was it like working with Mike Mignola?
So this is actually my second Hellboy thing. So I did the resource manual, and it broke my heart. It was one of the best things that ever happened to me, but broke my heart at the time. So I did the resource manual. I knew I was a green artist. I wasn't very good. I was a sculptor learning how to draw. So it wasn't perfect, and I knew it. And Mike Mignola hired the other artist on the project to do stuff for him after it, and he didn't hire me. So that kind of broke my heart. But what it also did is it lit a fire under my butt. And I told myself, and I meant it, that if I ever get a shot again, I'm gonna blow this out of the water like nobody had ever seen. I'm gonna curl Mignola's toes. And just put that on the back burner and used it as fuel. I think it's really important to find creative thrust. And sometimes that's not getting what you want. It makes you work harder if you're smart and dedicated. So I did, and I got much, much better. And then after I finished the sequel to The Cape with Joe Hill, Mignola called me up and asked if he could write me a Hellboy story. And I was like, sure. And he's like, Corbin's too old now, and he was failing in health. And Mignola's favorite story was The Crooked Man that he did with Richard Corbin. And he asked if I'd do the sequel. And I was like, sure. And it was basically, I like how you draw trees. What if I write a story with Mignola walking around the forest for $2? And I was like, I'm in. I don't care. And it ended up being a beautiful, beautiful story. I was very honored because I think it was his this is the sequel to his favorite story. So I took it on, and it was during a chaotic time, I think, for Mike too, because that last movie was coming out and it was not being received well. So things were a little tense at the time, and COVID was hitting. But I just kept my nose down, and I did my best. And my claim to fame on that one, don't tell Mignola anyone, is that I asked if I could do some covers too. And they're like, sure, make you the B cover. And that cover you just showed, after I drew that one, they made it the A cover. Mignola was actually the B cover. So that's my big, that was a little notch in my hat. So I went from him not wanting to hire me to my cover usurped his in the catalog. So it's a little victory, but it meant a lot to me. And I did it very well. Mignola gave me very kind words about it, and it finally got collected. And now the newest movie that they're in pre-production right now for is The Crooked Man. So my book is actually the sequel to the next movie. Pretty cool.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, pretty neat. But having Mignola call you back 17 and a half years later and ask you to draw something he wants to write that's very special to him, it meant the world to me. And I took it very, very seriously. I put a lot of fuel, and I burned a lot of calories on that one, even though it's only 2 issues. So very proud.
Wow. Everything comes full circle.
If you work, it will. Life serendipity only works if you're prepared for it. It's not serendipity if you don't have the skill set and wherewithal to recognize it. So I think it's a good lesson. Put stock in yourself rather than be bitter. F Mike Mignola, he didn't choose me. I was like, okay, you didn't choose me. Watch this. It may take a long time, but I'm going to come back. And when I come back, I'm going to be a MFing wizard. I'm going to be a wizard with like ninja swords and doing backflips around here. So, and that's all you can do is control your own. You can control your own fate. So I knew I wasn't good enough. I wanted to be good enough. So there's the chasm. So I just connected the dots there, and I was like, I'm going to one day be badass. And you just keep your head down, and you got to be thoughtful and dedicated, and anyone can do it. Again, I didn't start drawing till I was 24, people, not seriously. And I was drawing Hellboy 2.5 years after that, whether good or not. It was good, bad, everything in between. I was drawing effing Hellboy. And that launch. So all these people they don't think they have the chops or anything like that. It's just a decision in your head. That sounds really ridiculous. But if you have a truth you need to make a reality, it's just a decision. It's like climbing a mountain. Yeah, it sucks. But if you saw somebody else climb that mountain, it means you can too. And that's what I'd like to impart to people is just, you got to not only believe in your ego, I'm worth more than this. You got to be willing to prove it to people. And that takes, you got to burn some calories, little elbow grease.
The more you know. There you go.
There you go.
So once again, we're talking with comic book veteran Zach Howard on this episode of And I Quote. Don't forget to like and share this episode with all of your closest friends. If you have any questions for Zach, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. And whether you are watching this live or on the replay, thank you so much for being with us. So we're going to go from Hellboy to something else because you got a new project that's out now. You got a brand new Kickstarter that's blown up the interwebs. So let's take a look at that.
I bet you've heard a lot of tales about Bigfoot. Well, now it's time to set the record straight. Because we do things a little different here in Buzzard County. In this here story, the heroes are outlaws with hearts of gold and tanks of gas. These fellas might seem reputable, but they're bona fide retrobates. Sheriff's crooked as a dog's leg. Walter ain't bad. And the rest of these folks, well, hell. They're as weird as they come. Moonshine Bigfoot, the greatest cryptozoological action-adventure comedy of all time.
Let's do it.
Gee whiz. So Moonshine Bigfoot, what is this and how did it all come about?
So, it's my latest comedy. I haven't done a comedy since 2005 with Sean Murphy, I think, or real comedy, creator-owned comedy. We did something called Outer Orbit, which the end of last year suddenly got real hot, as in movie negotiations for an animated movie, even though it was like 15, 17 years old. And I was thinking to myself, I think that might have been the last time I truly had fun while working on a book. Usually they're just grinds. They're worth it. You're working for a goal to finish a book and people be happy and all that stuff. But I just miss laughing while working. And so this was an idea that an actor friend of mine had named Mike Marlowe, who's a theater actor here in Denver and writes screenplays. We were coming back from a convention, and hour 14 through the mountains of the drive, delirious, we were kind of bitching and poo-pooing like modern cinema, like let's just remake Dukes of Hazzard 8, and they try to just retread a tire rather than make a good story movie in contemporary times, capturing the feel of the first one. So I was making fun of it, and I just said, well, if you're gonna remake Dukes of Hazzard, do something fun, like have Bigfoot driving the car or something. And a million jokes later, and 6 months later, we had, I think, a really good, polished IP. And I just decided I put my other project, which is my opus that I'm working on right now, aside. It's a heavy-handed 450-pager because I wanted to have fun and I wanted to just enjoy going to work. And we had a phenomenal crew. On a concept drawing and a write-up, Image signed it right away. Luckily, my legacy helps with that a little bit, but I knew I had something. We kind of had lightning in a bottle, and yeah, we just wanted to do something fun, and that's how Moonshine Bigfoot came about, and it just started writing itself. It's, for people that don't know, it's a loving satire of kind of like 1980 Americana, when the world and media or pop culture is a little bit more innocent at that time, whether perceived or a false reality. Dukes of Hazzard, you didn't know who the hell General Lee was, and you didn't know about the terrible representation that, say, like the Dixie flag represents, the Articles of Confederation. You just watch these two goofballs out running the law in the backwoods and cars jumping, and you just kind of accepted these simple kind of high concept things tongue in cheek, and you just were in and out. It was nothing too serious, and it kind of lit up, or at least my childhood, all these shows that you don't know carry this uglier baggage on them. So we're trying to capture that feel of an innocent kind of fun time in pop culture in Americana, without getting heavy into geopolitical crap or overtones of that with all the society ills that we have nowadays. So we're kind of repurposing, kind of polishing Americana about that time, whether it's BJ the Bear or Knight Rider or A-Team or the goofy music that was working. I'm sure all of it's coke filled, but we're getting past that and just trying to just take the magic of the time without the weight of today's social issues and just have a fun adventure. And I think we came up with a lot of really heartfelt, endearing characters that take you through this wacky world. And that's Moonshine Bigfoot. It's a love story. It's a love affair with the innocence of 1980 Americana. Like Ronald Reagan's in it. He's an escaped Chuck E. Cheese animatronic pizza singing thing that they've repurposed as President Reagan, and just background noise of our book is fun. He'll be giving like UN speeches and then stop and go into a 20-minute pizza deal song, and everybody is just politely clapping at the UN, and then he goes back into policy, and that's our world. We set it up in such a ridiculous way. Bigfoot is actually the skeptic, the most realistic part of our story, and that's kind of like the turn in it. Bigfoot's kind of like Scully from X-Files. Like, I don't know. I don't believe in that. That's not, I don't know about that story. And he's just a skeptic about everything, even though he's a walking, breathing Bigfoot. But
well, congratulations on that. We wish you the best of luck with that Kickstarter moving forward. Do you have any other special memories for you from being at conventions or events, whether you were there as a vendor or there as an attendee?
Like, what do you mean by special? Like something?
Well, any other memories? Whether you met someone in the industry, or maybe you made friends with somebody that you didn't know you were going to work with somewhere down the line. It could be anything.
My number one favorite moment is when the Cape was super, super popular with all the Eisner stuff going around. I got flown out to Edmonton Con, and this is I had an amazing show, and at the end. I had to be picked up like the ass crack of dawn because, they have to take all the talent to the airport. So it doesn't matter if you have to wait 5 hours or 5 minutes, you're going on the van. And lo and behold, who's riding with me is Gwar, the band Gwar, the original members of the band Gwar. Okay, people look up Gwar if you don't know Gwar. They're a singular talent, whether you like them or not. There's about as unique kind of fantasy-based heavy metal. And they have some good music that I knew when I was younger. They have some great stuff. Rock and roll never felt so good, etc. But never really gave the band too much mind other than they were fun. Lo and behold, they're huge fans of the Cape and Joe Hill. So we're in the Edmonton airport, which was like, with all that shale money, they just rebuilt the whole airport for like all 12 people in the airport. It's the size of JFK. So there's no one in this brand new airport except, I swear, just Gwar and myself and the person checking us in. And we have like 3 hours before our flight. So we just start talking and walking around Edmonton Airport and all this stuff, and just start having a great time. I've never laughed so hard. It's just so cool with these two members that are known for being the creators of Gwar. It was Chuck and Beefcake were the two guys, and it's just the most fun I ever had for 2 hours, just farting around the airport laughing with them. Okay, so I give them my signed books and give them to them. They're reading all my stuff on the plane. They're sitting like right in front of me. We're in like business class, and then first class is right in front of us. And is a smaller plane, so there's literally one first class seat, and then it was business class. And the one first class seat, lo and behold, I'm not going to say who, but it was a beloved Star Trek star sat down in it, which is fine. Rub shoulders in the green rooms. That's always one of my favorite things, is getting to go to the green rooms in these big shows, and you learn your etiquette and you meet I've met so many Star Trek people. I think I may have said Star Wars before. Star Trek, which was huge in my early childhood. So it's always a huge fan. Well, this person, got to be careful. Nobody will know who it is, so I'll stay coy. But this person was known for drinking at the show. I thought they were drinking water. They were drinking Smirnoff and a lot of it. And that's why they had to be driven around in a golf cart because they couldn't walk because they're so messed up. Anyways, it's 11 in the morning, and this person wanders on the flight, sits down before the plane takes off, has 2 vodkas on ice. And I tell that story only because Gwar saw that. They turned and looked at each other with the eyebrows. And this is Gwar, who they have terrible things happening on their stage. Very, very grotesque stuff. And you'd think they're hard partiers. They looked at each other and looked at me and went, holy F. I just thought it was funny. A culmination that a Star Trek person outdrank Gwar at 11 in the morning made them take a step back. So maybe not the greatest story to tell. I apologize, fans, but that was my most seminal event as I got to hang out with Gwar. And they're really themselves, and they were fans. There's been a few other times, like William Stout. He was one of the most famous, long-term famous legacies in an American illustration. He used to work for the National Geographic and all sorts of stuff documenting in Antarctica, Antarctica, and had dinner with him a few times, and I just pick his brain because he is one of the lead artists on Conan the Barbarian movie. So just learning all these stories about Arnold and Milius having conversations in the parking lot, and it's just really neat, something that's connected to your life for 30-something years, and you memorized it and love it, and it inspired you. And here's a guy telling you hands-on stories about being on the ground floor, meeting Arnold for the first time, and trying to draw him and draw things for him. So that was pretty cool. William Stout and Gwar. Choose your poison, fans.
Boy, the things we hear on this show. Once again, we are talking with comic book veteran Zach Howard on this episode of And I Quote. Don't forget to like and share this episode with all of your closest friends. If you have any questions for Zach, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat, whether you're watching this live or on the replay. We greatly appreciate it. I want to let you know that this episode of And I Quote is indeed powered by our good friends over there at Poddex. Now, Poddex are unique interview questions and episode starting prompts in the palm of your very own hand. So whether you are a new podcaster or existing broadcaster looking to grow your audience or get more engagement, you're going to want to check out poddex.com. Use code Ryan10, that's RYAN10, Ryan10 for 10% off your first order. You're not going to want to miss out on that opportunity. So Poddex wants to know, Zach, what is one surefire way to grab your attention?
If you grab like a series of glow sticks, take all your clothes off and start doing cartwheels in front of me, I'd say you got a 50-50 shot.
Okay. There you go. Yep. Right away. So
pizza too. You can walk by with good smelling pizza. That's my vice.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with good pizza. It doesn't matter if it's any day of the week or twice on Sunday. Correct. So Poddex wants to know, what is something you love that is vintage?
Like vintage? Mm-hmm. My favorite thing vintage would be I quit football my senior year of high school, and I hated the coach, and I had always wanted a Mustang, so I ended up buying for nothing, a 67 Mustang, I would say, is my favorite vintage thing. And I spent a year, well, it ended up being 9 years. Anybody that owns a vintage car can understand that pain. But I spent 9 years just rebuilding it and having had a huge engine in it, big tires, like a big old dork. And I drove that thing around America for a good 9 years. So I'd say vintage cars are my favorite. Vintage muscle cars. I mean, Model T's cool and all, but, you know, I don't want to go bumping around the road like Grandpa. I'd rather have something with 500 horsepower that can driving those cars. I'm not big into cars like I used to be. I just have an old truck now. But when I was younger, it's just, I swear it increases your testosterone while you're just hitting the gas on those things. There's something neat about the vibration of a big muscle car. So that's what I'd say. Vintage muscle cars are pretty darn neat.
Oh, well, there you go. And what would you do with an extra hour in a day?
Oh my gosh. Is kitschy or is new age hippie as it sounds, I live right by one of the biggest trails in Colorado. And I would just take my dogs out for an hour more every day out into the mountains and nature preserves. It's something, it's become my passion. I used to be a surfer, and then I did MMA when I wasn't living by the oceans anymore, just to kind of get that chimp out of me that's always building up, stress and anxiety and sitting on my butt all day. The most cathartic thing on earth, I think, is just taking my dogs and going out and sweating in the sunshine of a Colorado mountain. So one more hour of that a day.
Nature. I love it. Anyway,
Yeah.
good answer to that question. Which actor let me rephrase. Which actor would you want to play you in a movie about your life?
Oh wow, this is a new one. Give me 1 second here. Any actor in history?
Yeah, living or dead, it doesn't matter.
Living or dead?
You can play with this question however you want.
I would say, I'm trying to be funny here, but I'm trying to find a funny angle. I don't know, man. I would get somebody that looked nothing like me. Like I would get, remember the dad from Family Matters? That's who I'd get. Winslow. Kevin Winslow.
Okay. I was trying to think, who was that character? But
The
yeah,
guy that's a likable cop or dad in every movie while I was growing up.
I think it was Winslow, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think it was Winslow.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. All right. What gives you butterflies in your stomach? And it could be anything.
PR, things like this used to make me a little nervous because I'm a little introverted. Like I'm good live, but when you like sit me in a chair and I got to stare at a camera, that makes me a little nervous. Though I've had that kind of that fear kind of burned out of me. Man, I don't even get nervous around actors or anymore. Henry Rollins would make me nervous. He was such an important Guardo Camino. He was my baggage carrier when I was young, kind of my second father, as Joseph Campbell would say. And if to this day, if I met him, I'd have a really, really hard time. I'd probably be very quiet just from being afraid from squealing, crying, and farting in front of him.
Oh my. Well,
combo.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Hey, you answer these questions however you wish. But the good news is you've conquered your fear of being on camera and speaking with other people on camera, and you've conquered your fear of public speaking. So fear is not a factor for you. With that being said, I want to thank Zach Howard for being our guest on this episode of And I Quote. Zach, thank you so much for being here. Where can the individual who is watching or listening to this follow you on social media and everything that you have coming up? What do you got?
So you can just search for me, Zach Howard, on Facebook, but Instagram, I'm known as SpaceFriend_Z. That's for a lot of my social media, but that's where I am on Instagram. Outside of Facebook and Instagram, you can just find, it's really easy to find me with any Google search of my name. I'm all over. I have a website. You'll see collector sites with my originals. And that's about it. I'd say I'm mostly Facebook and Instagram, though. I'm an old man, so I can't have the talk. Otherwise, it's too much. And that's about it. As far as Moonshine Bigfoot, I'd appreciate if everybody went to inked.pub/Moonshine Bigfoot, or just go to Kickstarter. We just hit our 4th stretch goal. You get 13 free comic books downloads at the end of this campaign, just for any level of support. So even $1 gas money gets you 8 free comic books. 3 of them are out of print, and 2 of them are old famous books that you just can't get anymore, including my books, including Steve Ellis's books, Clara Meese out of print famous sketchbooks. So it's a pretty good deal, even if you don't like moonshine and or Bigfoots. and or phenomenal literature, people, you can still get free comic books just by supporting the campaign. So give us a look, and I would appreciate each and every one of you for all time.
There you go. Thank you so much, Zach Howard, for being with us. I will talk to you in just a bit. My name is Ryan of Nerd Culture. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you wish, at RyanRPM5. Also, check out all our previous episodes of And I Quote, all the previous episodes of some of the other shows that we've done, some of the things we got coming up very soon. All the links are located within the description of this video, as well as our past videos of And I Quote. You can follow our past guests on their social media links and all that kind of jazz. Also, I want to let you guys know we're this close to hitting 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. Once we do, we're going to throw a great big celebration that's going to include a live stream with returning guests, some surprises, as well as some exclusive giveaways we're going to have here on the show. But the only way we're going to reach that is by you telling your friends, and they tell their friends, and so on, and so on, and so on. You know how these things go. So make sure you're following us at Neuroculture Channel on all our social media channels. Once again, those links are located within the description of each and every single one of our videos. Oh, that was a lot. But you know what? Thank you all for being here. We do greatly appreciate it. Once again, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, smash that notification bell so you get notified when our new videos go up. And in the meantime, stay healthy, stay strong, stay safe. And remember, life is better when reading. Take a look.
Famous Faces and Funnies in Melbourne, Florida is leading the way in pop culture fun. From comic books and graphic novels to Funko Pops and collector's items, Famous Faces and Funnies has it all. Rick Shea and the professional team at Famous Faces and Funnies are friendly and knowledgeable. Whether you're looking for toys, props, collector treasures, or a new comic book, Famous Faces and Funnies is your one-stop shop. To find Famous Faces and Funnies on Facebook and Twitter, just type at FFF Comics.
Sweet dreams they placed on me inside my mind. Chance my truth, twist the past, my memories are fading fast. Am I still missed? Who do you want me to be? Am I still
Choose high-flying action. Choose death-defying escapes. Choose spine-tingling thrills. Choose nail-biting intrigue. Now's your chance to choose the adventure. The Captain Hawkland Adventures. Available on Amazon.com. You've worked hard and written a great book. Now, it's time to give it a great cover. If you're an indie author or small press publisher, Plasmafire Graphics is your source for affordable cover illustration and graphic design. Plasmafire Graphics, when the look of your book matters to you.
Good morning. Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.